This 4-year-old beggar girl says they kicked me for sleeping here, but a millionaire buys the whole building and does something that will shock you. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The biting cold of the June morning in upstate New York made 6-year-old Lily shrink even further against the rough brick wall of the office building. Her tiny fingers clutched the dirty piece of cardboard that served as her only blanket as she watched with big, scared eyes the busy street scene on Main Street. People hurried past, avoiding looking at the child who had been sleeping there for weeks as if she were invisible. Lily had learned to stay quiet in the mornings. She knew that if she made noise or attracted attention, someone would come and tell her to leave. Her brown hair was tangled and dirty. Her clothes, a faded pink dress and an oversized jacket, smelled of mildew from the rainy days. Even so, she tried to keep herself as clean as possible, using the water from the fountain in the nearby town square when no one was watching. The sound of heavy footsteps approaching made her heart race. It was the building's security guard, a large man in a blue uniform who always looked at her with disdain. Lily knew that look. It meant trouble. "Hey you, how many times do I have to tell you that you can't stay here?" the man shouted, gesturing aggressively. "This is a business district, not a homeless shelter." The girl stood up quickly, clutching her cardboard to her chest. Her thin legs trembled, not only from the cold, but from the fear growing in her stomach. She had been through this before, in other parts of town. "Please, mister," Lily murmured in a weak voice. "I wasn't bothering anyone. I was just sleeping." "I don't care. Get out of here now or I'll call the cops." The security guard took a step towards her, making her recoil. "And don't come back. If I see you here again, there will be consequences." With unnecessary brutality, the man pushed Lily, causing her to stumble and almost fall. Her cardboard flew away in the wind, and she ran after it desperately, as it was all she had. Tears began to stream down her dirty face as she picked up her only possession. "They kicked me for sleeping here," she whispered to herself, as she always did when she felt too alone. It was a habit she had developed, talking to herself to feel less abandoned in the world. What Lily didn't know was that her words had been heard. Richard Thompson, 52, had just come out of an important meeting in the same building. Owner of a thriving handcrafted furniture company, he was used to numbers, contracts, and negotiations. His life was organized, meticulously planned, with no room for the unexpected. 3 years of widowhood had made his routine even more rigid. Work, return to an empty house, repeat the next day. But something in the scene he witnessed made a crack appear in his emotional armor. The child was so small, so fragile, and the way the security guard treated her sparked an anger he hadn't felt in a long time. Richard was a reserved man who avoided getting involved in other people's dramas, but there was something in that girl's eyes that hit him like a punch to the gut. Without thinking rationally, he approached the realtor who was still in the lobby of the building, closing some smaller deals. "I want to buy this building," Richard said directly, his voice carrying a determination that surprised even himself. The realtor, a middle-aged man named Robert, looked at him confused. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, but the building is not for sale. Besides, we just discussed other properties." "Everything has a price," Richard interrupted, taking his phone out of his pocket. "Contact the owners. I'll pay 50% above market value, cash." Robert gasped. 50%? "Sir, that's over $5 million, are you sure?" Richard looked out the glass window, seeing Lily sitting on the sidewalk in front, hugging her wet cardboard. Something in his chest tightened in a way he couldn't explain. "Absolutely sure," he replied, his eyes fixed on the girl. "And I want the deed signed by the end of the week." While Robert made frantic calls to the owners, who couldn't believe the proposal, Richard left the building and walked to a nearby deli. He bought a simple snack and a hot drink, then went back to where Lily was still sitting. The girl looked up when she saw the well-dressed man approaching. He was wearing an elegant grey suit and had dark hair with grey streaks at his temples. His eyes were kind, different from the looks she was used to receiving. "Hi," said Richard, crouching down to her level. "You must be hungry." Lily hesitated. Her foster mom, Sarah, always warned her about taking things from strangers, especially men. But her stomach rumbled loudly, betraying the 2 days without a proper meal. "You don't have to be afraid," Richard continued, holding out the bag with the snack. "It's just a sandwich and a hot chocolate, nothing else." The girl took the food, with trembling hands, murmuring an almost inaudible, "Thank you." Richard sat down on the sidewalk next to her, keeping a respectful distance. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lily," she replied between hungry bites. "Like the flower." "That's a pretty name," said Richard. "I'm Richard." Lily watched him as she ate, trying to decipher his intentions. There was something different about this man, a hidden sadness in his eyes that she recognized because she carried her own. "Are you going to leave now?" she asked, already expecting the answer that always came. "I don't know," Richard replied honestly. "Do I have to?" The question surprised her. No one had ever asked her opinion about anything. At that moment, watching this child eat as if it were her last meal, Richard made a decision that would change their lives forever. He didn't yet know what he would do, how he would do it, but he knew he couldn't just walk away and pretend he hadn't seen anything. What he didn't imagine was that Lily kept secrets that would soon come to light, secrets that would reveal a reality, much more complex than it seemed. In the next 3 days, Richard developed a routine he never imagined having. Every morning before going to the office, he stopped by Main Street with a snack for Lily. The girl was always there, in the same spot near the building, as if it were her established territory. She greeted him with a shy smile that grew a little, more with each meeting. "Good morning, Lily," he would say, sitting on the sidewalk next to her, without caring about the expensive suit he was wearing. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," she would reply, already more comfortable with his presence. During these morning conversations, Richard observed details that intrigued him. Lily spoke articulately for a child her age, used words that demonstrated knowledge beyond what was expected for someone living on the streets. When he mentioned books or stories, her eyes sparkled with genuine interest. "Did you go to school?" he asked on a rainy morning, offering her a children's raincoat he had bought. Lily hesitated, biting her lower lip. "A little bit," she murmured, avoiding his gaze. Before coming here." "Before what, Lily?" "Before being alone," she said quickly, changing the subject. "Thank you for the coat. It's very pretty." Richard realized that whenever he asked questions about her past, she would change the subject or become visibly uncomfortable. There were secrets there, layers of a story that the girl wasn't ready to tell. On the 4th day, something changed. Lily wasn't in her usual spot when he arrived. Richard waited for almost an hour, worried, until she appeared running down the street, breathless and with her face red with tears. "Lily, what happened?" He stood up immediately, noticing that she had a red mark on her arm. "Nothing," she lied, but her voice trembled. "I'm just late." "That mark on your arm." "I fell," she interrupted, pulling her sleeve down to cover the mark. "I'm clumsy sometimes." Richard knew she was lying, but he didn't want to pressure her. Instead, he offered the snack as usual, watching how she ate slower than normal, as if she was in pain. "Lily," he said gently, "you know you can trust me, right? If someone is hurting you." "No one is hurting anyone," she said quickly, but her eyes filled with tears. "I just need to be more careful, that's all." That afternoon, Richard made a decision that would change everything. Instead of going straight to the office after the morning meeting, he decided to watch Lily from afar. He hid in a nearby diner from where he could see her without being noticed. Around 3 in the afternoon, a rusty white van stopped near where Lily was sitting. Richard saw a woman with black hair and a hard expression get out of the vehicle and walk towards the girl. Even from a distance, he could see that Lily shrank when she saw her, like a frightened animal. The woman, who appeared to be about 30 years old, spoke to Lily in a way that seemed authoritarian, gesturing with her hands. Richard saw when she grabbed the girl's arm exactly where the red mark was and pulled her towards the van. Lily obeyed without question, but her whole body showed fear. Richard felt anger growing in his chest. He quickly paid the bill and ran to his car, determined to follow the van. During the journey through the streets of upstate New York, his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he tried to keep enough distance not to be noticed. The van headed towards the outskirts of town, passing through increasingly poor neighborhoods, until it stopped in a rundown housing complex. Richard parked a few blocks behind and watched the woman push Lily out of the vehicle roughly. They entered one of the ground-floor apartments, whose peeling paint and dirty windows betrayed the abandonment. Even without being able to hear the conversation, Richard could see through the exposed window that the woman was gesturing aggressively while talking to Lily. The girl remained with her head down, as if she was being scolded. During the 40 minutes he observed, Richard saw other children circulating in the courtyard of the housing complex. Boys and girls of varying ages, all with the same apathetic expression in their eyes, the same dirty and inadequate clothes for the cold. "My God," he murmured, beginning to understand the dimension of what he was witnessing. When it got dark, Richard went home, but he couldn't sleep. The images of the day repeated in his mind. Lily being dragged into the van, the mark on her arm, the fear in her eyes, the other children in the housing complex. He knew he had stumbled upon something much bigger and more complex than he had imagined. The next morning, he arrived earlier than usual on Main Street. Lily was already there, but she seemed different, more withdrawn, avoiding eye contact. When he approached her with the usual snack, she recoiled instinctively. "Lily, is everything okay?" "I can't talk to you anymore," she said in a low voice, the words coming out as if they had been rehearsed. "Aunt Sarah said it's not good for me." Aunt Sarah. Lily realized she had said too much and became even more tense. "I shouldn't have said that. Lily, this woman who came to pick you up yesterday, is she your aunt?" The girl's eyes widened. "How do you know?" Richard knelt in front of her, keeping his voice low and gentle. "Because I care about you, and I saw when she took you away." "You followed me?" Lily's voice mixed fear and surprise. "I wanted to make sure you were safe." Lily looked around nervously, as if she expected someone to be watching. "Aunt Sarah said that if I keep talking to strangers, she'll abandon me on the street forever, and that men only want to hurt children." The way she repeated the words, as if it were a memorized lesson, made Richard's heart ache. "Lily, not all adults want to hurt you. Some really want to help you." "How am I going to know the difference?" she asked, and there was so much sadness in that question that Richard had to make an effort not to let the emotion show. People who want to help you don't hurt you, don't threaten you, and don't force you to do things you don't want to, he said carefully. They treat you with affection and respect. Lily was silent for a long time, processing his words. Aunt Sarah said that if someone offers food or gifts, it's because they want something in return. And what do you think? Have I asked for anything in return? The girl studied him with her big, intelligent eyes. No, she finally admitted. You were just kind. At that moment, Richard understood that he was dealing with a child who had been systematically taught to distrust the kindness of others. Sarah had created a psychological prison around Lily, using fear as a tool for control. "I want you to know something," he said, looking directly into her eyes. "No matter what happens, there will always be a snack waiting for you here every morning, even if you can't talk to me, even if you have to pretend you don't know me. I'll be here." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Why? Why do you care about me?" The question hit Richard like a blade. How to explain to a 6-year-old that he saw in her the same loneliness he had carried since he was little? How to say that helping her was filling a void in his own soul? "Because every child deserves to be cared for," he said simply. "And because you are special, Lily, even if no one has told you that before." She wiped away her tears with the back of her dirty hand. "Aunt Sarah is coming to pick me up earlier. Today. She said we're going to a different place." Richard's heart raced. "A different place?" "She said it's not working out here anymore." Lily stood up, picking up her cardboard. "I have to go now." "Lily, wait." But she was already walking away, looking over her shoulder with an expression that mixed fear and something that looked like a plea for help. Richard stood on the sidewalk, watching her disappear into the morning crowd. He knew he had lost his only opportunity to find out where she would be taken, and for the first time in years, he felt the overwhelming weight of his own powerlessness. For 2 entire weeks, Richard scoured the streets of upstate New York, looking for Lily. Every morning, he left home 2 hours earlier, visiting parks, bus stops, shopping centers, and anywhere a child might be placed to beg. His company began to suffer from his constant absence, but he couldn't focus on anything else. "Mr. Thompson, you need to sign these contracts," insisted Carol, his 45-year-old secretary, an efficient woman who had worked with him for 8 years. "The suppliers are calling constantly, and we have 3 important meetings that have been postponed." "Later, Carol," he replied distractedly, looking out the window of his office as if he could see Lily walking down the street. "I need to resolve a personal matter first." Carol watched her boss with growing concern. Richard had always been meticulous, punctual, totally dedicated to business. Since the loss of his wife, he had become even more closed off, but he had never neglected work in this way. "Sir, may I ask what's going on? Maybe I can help," she offered delicately. Richard hesitated. How to explain that a 6-year-old child had turned his life upside down? How to say that he couldn't stop thinking about the fear in her eyes? "It's complicated, Carol. I just need to find someone." During his searches, Richard began to discover a world that had always existed, but that he had never really seen. He talked to other homeless people, local merchants, security guards of establishments. Gradually, he put together a disturbing picture about the exploitation of minors on the streets of upstate New York. "Ah, you're talking about Sarah," said Mrs. Peterson, a 60-year-old woman who sold pretzels in the town square. "That woman shows up around here from time to time with a different child. Always little girls, always with that scared look." "Do you know where she lives?" asked Richard, trying to control the anxiety in his voice. "I don't know, son, but I've seen her taking the bus on the line that goes to the west side, and once I heard her talking on the phone about changing spots because it was getting too hot." Richard noted each piece of information, no matter how small. The west side was a distant neighborhood known for its social problems. If Sarah had really moved Lily to avoid his interference, she could be anywhere in the area. On the 10th day of searching, he finally had a breakthrough. He was passing near the bus station when he saw a boy of about 8 years old asking passengers for money. Something in the child's posture, in the way he looked nervously around, reminded him of Lily. Richard approached and offered the boy a few dollars, along with a sandwich. "What's your name?" "Ricky," replied the boy, devouring the food. "Ricky, do you know a girl named Lily? Brown hair, about 6 years old?" The boy stopped chewing and looked at Richard suspiciously. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I care about her. She's disappeared and I want to make sure she's okay." Ricky studied Richard for a long moment. If you're a cop, I don't know anything. I'm not a cop. I'm just someone who cares. Aunt, Sarah said that if anyone asked about the girls, we were supposed to pretend we didn't know them. Richard's heart quickened. So you know Sarah? Ricky nodded hesitantly. She takes care of several of us. She said Lily was causing trouble because she had a man bothering her. Bothering? Richard felt a pang of indignation. I never did anything to hurt her. She's downtown now in front of the First Presbyterian Church. But you can't talk to her. If Aunt Sarah finds out, it'll be bad for everyone. Richard gave Ricky more money and ran towards the First Presbyterian Church. His heart was beating so hard that he could hear the blood pulsing in his ears. After 2 weeks of desperate searching, he would finally find Lily. When he arrived at the church, he saw her immediately. She was sitting on the steps, too thin, with clothes even dirtier than before. Her hair was cut unevenly, as if someone had used dull scissors. She was holding a plastic cup, begging for alms from the worshippers leaving the afternoon service. Richard felt like he had been punched in the stomach. In just 2 weeks, Lily had deteriorated visibly. Her cheeks were more hollow, her eyes had lost that sparkle of intelligence that he so admired. She looked like a broken doll. He approached slowly, trying not to scare her. When Lily saw him, her eyes widened in fear, and she shrank against the wall. "Lily," he whispered, kneeling at a safe distance. "My God, what have they done to you?" She looked desperately around, as if looking for an escape route. "You can't be here," she murmured. "If she finds out..." "Who did this to your hair?" "I did," she lied, but her hands trembled as she touched the unevenly cut strands. It was too hot. Richard could see that she was lying, but there was something more disturbing about her appearance. Besides the excessive thinness and the haircut, there was a change in her eyes. The fear was deeper now, more ingrained. "Lily, are you eating properly?" "Yes, I am," she said quickly, but her lips were chapped and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Why can't you talk to me? What did she say would happen?" Lily bit her lip, struggling between the desire to tell the truth and the fear of the consequences. "She said that if I talked to you again, she would leave me alone for real. No food, no place to sleep, nothing. And you believe that?" "I don't know what to believe anymore," she admitted, tears beginning to flow. "I'm so scared, Mr. Thompson." At that moment, a harsh voice cut through the air. "Lily, what are you doing?" Sarah had appeared out of nowhere, walking quickly towards them. She was a thin woman, about 34 years old, with poorly cared for black hair and a hard expression. Her small, dark eyes fixed on Richard with immediate hostility. Lily jumped, as if she had been shocked, spilling the few coins she had managed to collect. "Aunt Sarah, I wasn't..." "Shut up!" shouted Sarah, grabbing Lily's arm tightly. "How many times do I have to repeat not to talk to strangers?" "Please," said Richard, standing up slowly. "I just wanted to make sure she was okay." "And who are you to worry about her?" Sarah's voice dripped with venom. "Are you a relative? Are you a father? Are you anything?" "I'm someone who cares." "Liar!" Sarah pulled Lily closer to herself. "No man cares about a child for free. You want something, I know very well what." "That's a lie," protested Richard, feeling the anger growing. "I never..." "Lily, let's go. Now." The girl looked at Richard over her shoulder as she was dragged away, her eyes filled with silent tears. There was something in that look, a message that he couldn't decipher completely, but that seemed like a desperate plea for help. Richard stood on the steps of the church, watching Sarah push Lily towards the same white van. His hands were clenched into fists, all his education and civility fighting against the primitive impulse to run after them and snatch the girl away from that woman. But he knew that would only make things worse for Lily. Sarah had total control over her, and any rash action could result in terrible consequences for the child. That night, Richard couldn't eat dinner. sitting in his empty house, a 3-story mansion he had bought to start a family that never came. He thought obsessively about Lily's visible deterioration. In 2 weeks, she had transformed from a scared but still lively child into a shadow of herself. "What am I going to do?" he murmured to the emptiness of his living room. For the first time since the loss of his wife, Richard felt a purpose burning in his chest. He couldn't save Marianne from the accident that took her, but maybe he could save Lily from a fate that seemed increasingly bleak. He needed a plan, and he needed to act before it was too late. Richard spent the next few days devising a meticulous plan. He discreetly hired a private investigator, Paul Henderson, a 48-year-old ex-police officer who specialized in cases involving children at risk. Paul was a serious man, of few words, but with a solid reputation in the city. "I need information about a woman named Sarah," Richard said during the meeting in his office. "Last name unknown, about 34 years old, uses children for begging." Paul made notes in a small notebook. "Do you have any specific suspicions besides the exploitation of minors?" "I'm sure she's mistreating a 6-year-old girl named Lily. I've seen signs of physical violence, severe psychological manipulation." "I understand. I'll need a few days to gather information. Cases like this are delicate. These people often change address frequently." While waiting for Paul's report, Richard made another important decision. He went to the most respected law firm in upstate New York, Dr. Frederick Castleman, a family law specialist with 30 years of experience. "Dr. Castleman, I want to know about adoption processes in special cases," Richard said, sitting in the lawyer's elegant office. Frederick, a 55-year-old man with grey hair and glasses, studied Richard carefully. "Do you have any specific child in mind?" "I do. A girl who is being exploited. I want to get her out of that situation. Mr. Thompson, I need to be clear. Adoption processes are complex and lengthy. If there is suspicion of abuse, the first step is to contact Child Protective Services. And how long would that take? Months, maybe years. First, the child would be removed from the environment, then placed in a foster family or shelter, while the family situation is investigated. Only after that would adoption be considered. Richard felt his heart tighten. Years. She may not survive years in that situation. Unfortunately, the system is bureaucratic, but there is a faster, albeit risky alternative. If we can prove that the child is in imminent danger and there are no other relatives, we can request temporary guardianship. What do I need for that? Solid evidence of abuse, psychological evaluation of the child, and above all, proving that you have the conditions to offer a suitable home. Richard noted each word. Evidence. He needed concrete evidence. 3 days later, Paul returned with information that confirmed Richard's worst fears. Sarah Miller, 34 years old, with police records for petty theft and drunkenness, lives in a rented apartment in the West Side. Neighbors report that several children pass through the house, always in precarious conditions. And what about Lily's family? That's the saddest part, Paul sighed. Lily Roberts, born in January 2018. Parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. There are no records of other close relatives. Sarah presented herself as aunt to obtain informal custody of the girl. Informal, never legalized. Technically, Lily is an orphan without an official legal guardian. This may facilitate your case, Mr. Thompson. Richard felt a mixture of hope and outrage. Continue investigating. I need more details about how Sarah treats the children. That same day, Richard made a decision that he considered crucial. He returned to the place where he had last seen Lily, at the First Presbyterian Church, hoping to find her again. He arrived early and positioned himself discreetly in a nearby cafe, watching. Around 2 in the afternoon, Sarah's white van stopped in front of the church. 3 children came out of it. Lily, the boy Ricky he had met at the bus station, and a slightly older girl, about 8 years old, whom he didn't know. Sarah remained in the vehicle while the children spread out on the steps of the church. Richard watched in horror as they performed what seemed to be a rehearsed routine: strategic positioning, rehearsed expressions of suffering, memorized phrases to move passers-by. Lily was even thinner than last time. Her movements were slow, as if she was saving energy. When a lady approached to give a coin, Richard could hear Lily say in a weak voice, "Thank you, Mom. God bless you." It was clearly a phrase they had taught her to repeat. After 2 hours of watching, Richard saw Sarah get out of the van and walk to the children. She spoke quietly, but her gestures were threatening. She took the coins that each child had collected, counted them quickly, and said something that made Lily lower her head in shame. It was then that Richard made a risky decision. When Sarah returned to the van, he approached Lily quickly. "Lily," he whispered, "I need you to listen to me carefully." She looked up, terrified. "You can't be here." "Listen, I found out the truth about your parents. I know Sarah isn't your real aunt." Lily's eyes widened. "How do you know?" "Because I had it investigated. Your parents were called John and Mary Roberts, weren't they? They died in an accident 2 years ago." Tears began to stream down Lily's face. You knew them." "I know Sarah lied to you. She has no legal right over you, and I know she's hurting you." "Oh, she said that if I didn't bring enough money, she would leave me on the street to die," confessed Lily between sobs, "and that nobody else would want me because I'm ugly and useless." The anger that Richard felt at that moment was so intense that he had to make a superhuman effort to keep his voice low. "Lily, none of that is true. You are a beautiful and intelligent girl, and there are people who care about you. Like you, exactly like me." At that moment, they heard the van honking. Sarah had noticed that Lily was talking to someone. "Lily, I need you to know something," said Richard quickly. "If one day you can escape, if you can get to my office, I will protect you. Elm Street 340, can you remember?" "Elm Street 340, she repeated. "That's it. And Lily, can you read and write?" She hesitated, looking nervously at the van. "A little bit. My mom taught me before. If you can write down everything Sarah does to you, every bad thing, every threat. It may be important." The horn sounded again, more insistent. "I have to go," said Lily, wiping away the tears. "Remember, Elm Street 340, and remember that you are not alone." Lily ran towards the van, but before getting in, she looked back one last time. There was something different in her eyes now, not just fear, but also a spark of hope. Sarah got out of the van and marched furiously towards Richard. "I warned you to stay away from her, and I warned you that I care about her well-being," replied Richard, remaining calm. "If I see you near her again, I'm going to make a scene. I'm going to scream that you're molesting a child." "Do it," said Richard calmly, "but I'm also going to scream some things, like the fact that you don't have legal custody of this child and you're exploiting her for begging." Sarah's face paled slightly. "You don't know anything about our situation. I know more than you imagine, and I know there are authorities interested in cases like yours." Sarah stared at him for a long moment, trying to assess whether he was bluffing. Finally, she spat on the ground near his feet and returned to the van. Richard watched the vehicle drive away, but this time, instead of feeling powerless, he felt energized. He had planted a seed of hope in Lily and made it clear to Sarah that she was being watched. Now it was a matter of time, and he would do everything to ensure that it wasn't too much time. A week passed without Richard seeing Lily again. Sarah had changed the routine, probably in response to the confrontation at the church. Richard knew that this meant that his words had had an impact, but it also increased his concern about what might be happening to the girl away from the public eye. Paul continued to investigate, but the news was not encouraging. "She's changed address, Mr. Thompson. Neighbors of the apartment in the west side said that she left in the early morning 3 days ago, taking only a few bags. And the children. Nobody knows. One neighbor said she heard a child crying the night before the move, but Sarah claimed it was the television." Richard felt desperate. Every day that passed without news of Lily was a day in which she might be suffering even more retaliation for having talked to him. Guilt gnawed at him. Perhaps his interference had worsened the girl's situation. It was then that his secretary, Carol, brought unexpected news. "Mr. Thompson, there's a child downstairs, wanting to talk to you. He says it's urgent." Richard's heart leapt. "A girl? Brown hair?" "No, sir, it's a boy. Very dirty, seems scared." Richard ran down the stairs and found Ricky, the boy he had met at the bus station. He was trembling, his clothes dirtier than before, and there was a recent cut on his lip. "Ricky, what happened? How did you find me?" "Lily told me where you worked," said the boy, looking nervously around. "She's in danger, Mr. Thompson. Real danger. Come in, quick." Richard took the boy to his office, closing the door. "Carol, bring water and something for him to eat." As soon as they were alone, Ricky poured everything out. "Aunt Sarah was very angry after you talked to Lily at the church. She beat Lily and said she was going to teach her a lesson she would never forget." "What kind of lesson?" "She locked Lily in a dark room 3 days ago, without food, only water once a day. And she said it was going to be like that until she promised never to talk to you again." Richard felt his blood run cold. "Where are they now?" "In an abandoned house near the highway. It's not far, but it's hidden. Aunt Sarah said that if anyone showed up looking, we were supposed to pretend we didn't know anything." "Why are you telling me this? Aren't you afraid of what she might do to you?" Ricky lowered his eyes. "Because Lily helped me once when I was feeling really bad, and because she said that you were different from the other adults, that you really cared." Carol came in with a sandwich and water. Ricky ate voraciously while drawing an improvised map on the back of a sheet of paper showing the location of the abandoned house. "There's one more thing," said Ricky between bites. "Lily asked me to give this to you if I could find you." He took a small, crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. Richard opened it carefully and felt his heart tighten. It was a message written in childish handwriting, clearly done in the dark. "Mr. Thompson, she said you are bad, but I know you are not. I'm scared. I wrote everything like you said. It's under the loose board near the window. Please help me. Lily." "My God," murmured Richard. "Ricky, is she okay? Is she hurt?" "She was very weak when I left. Aunt Sarah only gave her leftover oatmeal this morning, and shouted that if she didn't stop crying it was going to be worse." Richard stood up immediately. "I'm going to get her now." "Sir, Aunt Sarah isn't alone. There's a man with her, Jimmy. He's bigger than you and has a reputation for being a violent—" "I don't care." Richard was already grabbing his car keys. "Wait!" Ricky grabbed his sleeve. "Aunt Sarah went to town to buy food. She said she wouldn't be back until night. If you go now, only Jimmy will be there, and he sleeps a lot. During the day because he drinks a lot." Richard stopped, forcing himself to think rationally. It was an opportunity, but also a huge risk. "Can you take me there?" "I can, but then will you take me far away from here? When Aunt Sarah finds out I told you, she'll want to kill me." "I promise I'll protect you too." An hour later, they were standing 200 yards from a dilapidated house on the outskirts of upstate New York. The place was isolated, surrounded by empty lots and tall grass. The house had broken windows and peeling paint, looking abandoned for years. "It's there," whispered Ricky. "Jimmy usually sleeps in the front room. Lily is in the back room." Richard watched the house for a few minutes. There were no signs of movement. His rational mind told him to call the authorities, but his heart screamed that Lily didn't have time for bureaucracy. "Ricky, stay in the car. If anything goes wrong, drive to the nearest police station and tell them everything." "But I don't know how to drive." "Then run. Run really fast." Richard approached the house from the side, avoiding the main entrance. The floorboards groaned under his feet, but there was no sound coming from inside. He found a side window with broken glass and managed to enter silently. The smell that hit him was horrible, a mixture of mold, urine, and accumulated trash. The house was in a deplorable state, with debris scattered throughout the rooms and evidence that it was used by occasional homeless people. In the front room, as Ricky had predicted, a man in his 40s was sleeping on a dirty mattress on the floor. Empty liquor bottles were scattered around him. Jimmy was snoring loudly, clearly in a state of deep drunkenness. Richard tiptoed past him and headed to the back of the house. There were 2 closed doors. He tried the first one. It was locked from the outside with a hook. From the other side he heard a faint sound, like a muffled groan. "Lily," he whispered, fiddling with the hook on the door. The sound stopped for a moment, then a weak voice came. "Mr. Thompson, it's me. I'm going to get you out of there." When he managed to open the door, the scene he found almost made him scream with anger. Lily was huddled in a corner of the empty room, sitting on some old newspapers. She was even thinner, her lips were cracked from dehydration, and there was a purple mark on her face. "My God, Lily." She tried to stand up, but her legs trembled and she almost fell. Richard picked her up in his arms, feeling how too light she was, like an injured bird. "It's okay now," he murmured, carrying her towards the window. "You're safe." "I knew you would come," she whispered against his chest. "I knew." "Where are the papers you wrote?" With a trembling hand, she pointed to a loose board near the window. Richard gently put her down on the floor and lifted the board, finding several folded pieces of paper. They were pages from a school notebook, covered with Lily's careful handwriting, reporting days of deprivation, threats, and abuse. "You're very brave," he said, putting the papers in his pocket. When they went out the window, Jimmy was still sleeping soundly. Ricky waited anxiously for them in the car. "Lily!" he shouted when he saw her. "Are you okay?" "I am now," she said, trying to smile despite the weakness. As they drove away from that terrible place, Richard looked in the rear-view mirror and saw Lily asleep in the back seat, her head resting on Ricky's shoulder. For the first time in weeks, she seemed at peace, but Richard knew that the hardest part was just beginning. Sarah would find out that Lily was gone, and he would need to be prepared for a battle that could determine the girl's future. His phone rang. It was Paul, the investigator. "Mr. Thompson, I have important news about Sarah. I discovered something that may change everything." Richard drove directly to the nearest hospital, where Lily was immediately attended to by the doctors. The pediatrician on duty, Dr. Emily Carter, a 42-year-old woman with 20 years of experience, examined the girl with an increasingly serious expression. "This child is severely malnourished," she said to Richard after the examination. "In addition, there are evident signs of abuse, bruises in different stages of healing, dehydration, and signs of severe psychological stress. Will she be okay?" "With proper care, yes, but I need to ask some questions. Are you her father?" Richard hesitated. "Not exactly. It's complicated." "I understand. I'll need to notify Child Protective Services about this case. It's mandatory. In situations of child abuse." While Lily received IV fluids and medical care, Richard returned Paul's call. The investigator was waiting in the hospital parking lot. "What did you find out?" asked Richard as soon as they met. "Sarah Miller isn't just a common exploiter of minors," began Paul, consulting his notes. "She has a much more extensive history than we imagined. In the last 5 years, at least 8 children have passed through her, all orphans or from very poor families." And where are these children now? That's the disturbing part. 3 were found in other states, being exploited by different people. 2 returned to distant relatives in deplorable conditions. The other 3 were never located. Richard felt his stomach churn. Are you suggesting that she sells the children? It's a possibility. I found records of suspicious bank transfers, always preceded by the disappearance of a child under her care. My God. And the police? There's an investigation underway, but it's very slow. Lack of concrete evidence, witnesses who disappear. Sarah is smarter than she seems. At that moment, Richard's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? You have something that is mine, said a harsh female voice. It was Sarah. If you're talking about Lily, she was never yours. Listen well, you idiot. You don't know who you're messing with. Lily will come back to me, or you'll regret it. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You have until tomorrow morning to return the girl. If you don't return her, I'll go to the police and I'll say you kidnapped her. Do it. I'd love to show. The police, the state in which I found her. No one will believe you. Everyone knows that rich men only want one thing from poor children. The call was cut off. Richard stared at the phone, his hands trembling with anger. Was that her? Asked Paul. Yes, she wants Lily back by tomorrow, or she'll accuse me of kidnapping. Mr. Thompson, technically she can do that. In the eyes of the law, she is still informally responsible for Lily. But there are the papers that Lily wrote, the medical report. They may help, but the process is slow. And Sarah knows how to manipulate the system. Richard returned to the hospital, where he found Lily awake, eating soup. She smiled when she saw him, a weak but genuine smile. How are you feeling? Better, she said. The doctor is very kind. She said I'm going to be okay. Lily, I need to tell you something. Sarah knows you're here. She may try to take you back. The fear immediately returned to the girl's eyes. She's going to hurt me even more if I go back. I won't let that happen, but I need you to be very brave and tell other people everything that Sarah did to you. Who? People who can protect you. Government people who take care of children. Lily took his hand. Are you going to stay with me? I'm going to fight to stay, but even if I can't always be by your side, I'll make sure you're safe. The next day, the situation became complicated, exactly as Paul had predicted. Sarah appeared at the hospital, accompanied by a public defender, and demanded that Lily be returned to her. This child has been under my responsibility for 2 years, she said to the social worker who had arrived to assess the case. This man kidnapped her from the street yesterday. That's a lie, protested Richard. She was being held in private. Imprisonment, without food, in an abandoned house. Prove it, said Sarah's lawyer. Where are the witnesses? Where is the evidence? Richard showed the papers that Lily had written, but the lawyer dismissed them. They may have been forged. A traumatized 6-year-old child can be easily manipulated. The social worker, Miss Patricia Johnson, a 38-year-old woman with experience in complex cases, asked to speak with Lily in private. For 20 minutes, she talked to the girl in a reserved room. When she came out, her expression was serious. The child shows clear signs of trauma and extreme fear of Ms. Miller. She reported episodes of physical violence and food deprivation. The girl is confused, insisted Sarah. She's had a high fever in recent days. She may be delirious. Then why is she malnourished? Asked Dr. Carter, who had followed the discussion. She is a difficult child to feed. She has always been very thin. The social worker consulted her documents. Ms. Miller, I don't find official records of your guardianship over this child. I'm her aunt. I informally took care of her after the death of her parents. But there is no documentation proving kinship. Sarah became visibly nervous. The documents were lost in the move. It was then that Dr. Frederick Castleman arrived at the hospital. Richard had called him in the early morning, asking for urgent help. With permission," said the lawyer, introducing himself, "I represent Mr. Richard Thompson, who is requesting emergency guardianship of this child." "Based on what?" asked Sarah's lawyer. "Based on evidence of systematic abuse and the absence of legal documentation on the part of the current guardian. Furthermore, my client has exceptional conditions to offer a suitable home to the child." The discussion went on for hours. While the adults debated her future, Lily remained in the hospital room, momentarily safe, but clearly scared by all the commotion. Ricky, who had spent the night at Richard's house, appeared at the hospital accompanied by Paul. The boy was willing to testify against Sarah, recounting everything he had witnessed. "She hit Lily almost every day," said Ricky to the social worker, "and sometimes she would go days without giving her proper food. She said that if Lily didn't bring enough money, she would go hungry." "Why didn't you seek help before?" asked Ms. Johnson. "Because she said that if any of us told anyone, she would hand us over to much worse people, and I believed her." The situation took a decisive turn when Paul presented the information he had collected about Sarah's history. The suspicious bank records, the reports about other missing children, and mainly a recording he had secretly made of a conversation between Sarah and an unknown man, discussing transferring the merchandise to another state. "Merchandise?" questioned the social worker. "That's how she referred to the children," explained Paul. Sarah's face paled. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear, and she became visibly more nervous. "Ms. Miller," said the social worker, "in light of this evidence, I will recommend that the child be removed from your responsibility immediately, while a more thorough investigation is conducted." "That's unfair. I took care of her for 2 years." "Exploiting her for 2 years," corrected Dr. Castleman. "My client is requesting temporary guardianship and has all the conditions to obtain it." At that moment, Lily appeared at the door of the room, wearing a hospital gown. She had overheard part of the conversation. "I want to stay with Mr. Thompson," she said in a small but firm voice. "Please, don't send me back." All eyes turned to her. Sarah tried to approach her, but Lily recoiled immediately, hiding behind Richard. "See how she reacts to the presence of the supposed aunt?" observed Dr. Castleman. The social worker made her final decision. "The child will remain under the temporary guardianship of Mr. Richard Thompson while the case is investigated. Ms. Miller, you will not be able to have contact with the minor until further notice." Sarah left the hospital furious, but not before casting a threatening look at Richard. "This is not over," she murmured as she passed him. Richard knelt in front of Lily. "You're safe now. I'll never let anyone hurt you again." For the first time since they had met, Lily hugged him spontaneously, and Richard felt tears streaming down his face. Finally, she was protected. But deep down, he knew that Sarah wouldn't give up easily, and that the next few days would be crucial to ensure that Lily never returned to that life of suffering. Lily's first days in Richard's house were a mixture of wonderful discoveries and unexpected challenges. The 3-story mansion, which had always seemed too empty for one person, suddenly came to life with the presence of the 6-year-old girl. Richard had transformed one of the rooms on the 2nd floor into a true children's paradise. Walls painted, light blue, new furniture, carefully selected educational toys, and a bookshelf full of colorful books. But when he showed the room to Lily, she stood at the door without entering. "Is this room for me?" she asked, incredulous. "All yours," replied Richard with a smile. "Do you like it?" "It's very pretty," she said, but still hesitated to enter. "But what if I get something dirty? What if I break something?" The question revealed years of psychological conditioning. "Lily, this is your room. You can play, sleep, do whatever you want in here. Nothing you do will make me angry." Slowly she entered and touched the new bed with reverence, as if it was something sacred. "It's soft," she murmured, sitting on the edge. "You can lie down. You can jump on the bed if you want." "Can I really?" Her eyes sparkled for the first time since she had arrived. "Yes, you can." Lily lay down carefully and closed her eyes. "I've never slept in such a comfortable bed." Richard felt his heart ache. "From now on, you'll sleep in a bed like this, every night." But the adaptation was not simple. Lily had constant nightmares, waking up screaming in the middle of the night. Richard would run to her room and find her huddled, trembling with fear. "She came to get me," sobbed Lily after the third nightmare of the week. "Aunt Sarah was here and said she was going to take me back." "It was just a dream, sweetheart. You're safe here with me." "But what if she manages to get in? What if she breaks the door?" Richard sat on the edge of the bed. "Do you want me to stay here until you fall asleep?" "Can you?" "I can." And so began a routine. Every night, Richard would stay in Lily's room until she fell asleep, telling stories or simply talking quietly about what the next day would be like. During the day, other challenges appeared. Lily didn't know how to use a clean bathroom properly, didn't know how to behave at the table during meals, and had anxiety attacks when Richard left home, even for a short time. "Where are you going?" she would ask, clinging to his sleeve when he picked up the car keys. "I'm going to the office for a few hours. Carol will stay here with you." "But what if you don't come back?" "I'll always come back, Lily. I promise." Carol, his secretary, had offered to help with the girl's care. Initially skeptical about Richard's decision to take responsibility for a child, she quickly fell in love with Lily. "She's very intelligent," commented Carol after spending an afternoon with the girl. "She learned how to use the computer in an hour, and she's reading books for children much older." "Her mother must have done a good job before leaving," replied Richard. It was Carol who suggested that Lily needed professional help to deal with the trauma. "She doesn't talk about her parents, nor about what life was like before Sarah. It's as if she has completely blocked those memories." Richard sought out the best child psychologist in upstate New York, Dr. Eleanor Bennett, a specialist in childhood trauma. During the first consultation, Lily remained in complete silence for 40 minutes. "It's normal," explained the psychologist to Richard. "Children who have suffered systematic abuse develop very strong defense mechanisms. It will take time for her to trust enough to open up." Meanwhile, the legal situation became complicated. Dr. Castleman had obtained temporary guardianship, but Sarah had not given up. She hired a more experienced lawyer and was contesting the decision. "She's claiming that you manipulated the child against her," explained Dr. Castleman during a meeting in his office. "Furthermore, she's questioning your ability to care for a girl, being a single man." "That's ridiculous." "I agree, but the judicial system is sometimes conservative in these matters. We need to build a solid case showing that you offer the best environment for Lily. What else can I do? Keep documenting everything, her progress, the medical consultations, the emotional development, and it would be interesting if we could get more witnesses about the treatment that Sarah gave the children." It was then that Paul brought a disturbing discovery. "Mr. Thompson, I managed to locate 2 of the children who passed through Sarah previously. One of them, Annie Clark, 9 years old, is willing to talk." Annie Clark had been found in Philadelphia, living with a family that used her as domestic child labor. When Paul interviewed her, with the authorization of the local child protective services, she revealed shocking details about Sarah's methods. "She always said that if any of us said anything, she would sell us to very bad people," said Annie Clark. "And when a girl named Sophie tried to escape, Aunt Sarah disappeared with her. We never saw Sophie again." The information was immediately passed on to the police, who intensified the investigation into Sarah, but she had disappeared. After losing custody of Lily, Meanwhile, Lily began to show signs of recovery. 2 weeks after arriving at Richard's house, she finally laughed for real while watching a cartoon. The sound of her laughter filled the room, and Richard felt a happiness that he hadn't experienced for years. "Did you like the cartoon?" he asked. "I liked it a lot. The puppy is very funny." Then she became serious suddenly. "Mr. Thompson, can I call you Daddy?" The question caught him off guard. "Would you like to call me that?" "I would, if you don't mind." "It would be an honor," he said, feeling tears in his eyes. "And can I call Carol Aunt Carol?" "I'm sure she would love that." That night, for the first time since she had arrived, Lily slept through the night without nightmares. Richard watched her sleep peacefully, thinking about how his life had changed completely in a few weeks. The next day, during breakfast, Lily asked a question that he didn't expect. "Daddy Richard, why did you save me?" "Because you are a very special girl, and every child deserves to be loved and protected." "But you didn't know me. Why did you care about me?" Richard paused, searching for adequate words to explain something that he himself didn't understand completely. Sometimes our heart recognizes special people even before our mind understands why. When I saw you that morning, I knew immediately that you were important. And now you're my real daddy? If you want me to be, yes. I want to very much. But the happiness was interrupted when Paul arrived with urgent news. "Mr. Thompson, I need to talk to you immediately." They retreated to the office, leaving Lily playing in the living room with Carol. "Sarah has been found," said Paul, "but not in the way we expected." "What do you mean?" "She was arrested last night in Baltimore, trying to sell a 4-year-old child to a suspicious couple. The police had been investigating the network for months." Richard felt relief and horror at the same time. "And now?" "Now we know that you saved Lily from a fate much worse than we imagined. Sarah was not just negligent, she was preparing to sell Lily too." "How do you know that?" "During the interrogation, she confessed details about her business. She said she was waiting for Lily to turn 7 because preferred clients paid more for girls that age." Richard needed to sit down. The reality of what almost happened to Lily was terrifying. "There's more," continued Paul. "She mentioned that she had a special buyer interested in Lily specifically. Someone who had been watching her for weeks." "Who?" "She didn't say the name, but described a well-dressed man, middle-aged, who offered a very high amount for Lily." A chill ran down Richard's spine. "Do you think this man may still be out there?" "It's possible. And if he really wanted Lily specifically, he may try other ways to reach her." At that moment, Richard understood that saving Lily had been just the beginning. Protecting her would be a responsibility that would last much longer than he had imagined, and that maybe they weren't completely safe yet. The discovery about the special buyer completely changed the routine of Richard and Lily. He hired a security system for the house, installed cameras, and began to watch every car that passed by the street with suspicion. Paul continued to investigate, trying to identify who the man interested in Lily might be. "Daddy Richard, why are there cameras in the house now?" asked Lily during lunch, looking out the window at the newly installed equipment. "It's just to keep us safer, sweetheart, like wearing a seatbelt in the car." "Is it because of Aunt Sarah?" Richard hesitated. Since Sarah's arrest, Lily had shown great relief, but he didn't want to scare her with the possibility of other threats. "Aunt Sarah can't bother us anymore. Now it's just normal precaution." "I understand," she said, returning to her meal. "Daddy, can I go to school?" The question surprised him. "Would you like to go to school?" "I would very much. Carol said that children my age go to school to learn and make friends." "Let's talk about that, okay?" That afternoon, Richard met with Dr. Castleman to discuss the updated legal situation. With Sarah's arrest and her confessions, the guardianship process had become much more favorable. "The good news is that Sarah lost any rights over Lily," explained the lawyer. "The bad news is that now we need to formalize the adoption, and that may take months. And meanwhile, Lily stays under your temporary guardianship but with official status. You can enroll her in school, make medical decisions, everything that a father would do." "And what about this story of the buyer? Does that affect the process?" "Actually, it strengthens your case. It demonstrates that you saved Lily from a real and concrete danger." 2 days later, Richard was in his office when Carol arrived running, visibly scared. "Mr. Thompson, there's a strange man prowling your house." "What do you mean?" "I've been with Lily for 2 hours, and I've already seen the same black car pass by the street 4 times. The last time, the driver stopped and watched the house for a few minutes." Richard immediately called Paul. "You need to come to my house now. It may be the buyer." When they arrived at the house, the car was no longer there, but the security cameras had recorded everything. In the images, they could clearly see a black sedan with dark windows stopping in front of the property. A man got out of the vehicle. He appeared to be between 50 and 60 years old, well-dressed, grey hair, and watched the house for almost 5 minutes. "It's him," said Paul, studying the images. "Description matches perfectly with what Sarah said." "What do we do?" "First, we reinforce security. Second, I try to identify the subject through the car's license plate." Lily, who was playing in the living room, noticed the adult's tension. "Did something bad happen?" "Nothing for you to worry about," said Richard, sitting next to her. "But I think it's better if you don't play in the yard for a few days, okay?" "Okay, but can I keep asking to go to school?" Her insistence on going to school touched Richard deeply. After everything she had been through, Lily still wanted to learn, to be a normal child. "You know what? Let's visit some schools this week." Her eyes lit up. "Really? Really?" The next day, they visited 3 private schools in upstate New York. In all of them, Lily demonstrated an impressive curiosity, asking intelligent questions about the classrooms, the library, the activities. At the 3rd school, St. Clair's Academy, she stopped in front of a room where children her age were doing an art activity. "They're painting!" she exclaimed, pressing her face against the glass of the door. The principal, Sister Agnes, a 65-year-old woman with decades of experience in education, observed Lily's reaction with interest. "Your daughter likes art?" "Very much," replied Richard. "She draws constantly." "That's good. Art is very therapeutic for children who have gone through difficult experiences." Richard looked at her in surprise. "Do you know?" "I recognize the signs, Mr. Thompson. I've worked with many children in similar situations. Lily would be very welcome here." That afternoon, Richard enrolled Lily in St. Clair's Academy. She would start the following Monday, but before that, Paul brought disturbing information about the man in the black car. "I managed to identify the vehicle," said Paul during a meeting at home. "It's registered in the name of Marcus Blackwood, 58 years old, a real estate businessman." "Businessman doesn't seem the type." "That's where it gets interesting. Blackwood has a legitimate company, but there are rumors about parallel activities. Nothing proven, but some anonymous complaints about questionable businesses involving minors." "My God, what now?" "Now we know who he is, and that gives us an advantage. I'm going to pass this information on to the police, who are already investigating Sarah's network." That night, Richard talked to Lily about basic precautions. "Sweetheart, I need you to always tell me if any stranger talks to you, okay?" "Okay, Daddy. But why?" "Because sometimes bad people try to trick children, and I always want to know where you are and who you're with. Like Aunt Sarah used to do?" "Exactly, but now you have someone who really protects you." On Monday, Lily's first day of school was an emotional milestone for both. She was nervous but excited, wearing a new uniform and carrying a pink backpack that she had chosen personally. "What if the other children don't like me?" she asked in the car. "Impossible not to like you. replied Richard. "You're kind, intelligent, and very special. What if I don't know how to do the activities? Then you'll learn. That's what school is for." The teacher, Miss Bennett, 45, had been briefed on Lily's situation and was prepared to receive her with special care. During the first week, Lily adapted better than anyone expected. "She's exceptionally intelligent," reported the teacher to Richard. "She's far ahead of the other children in reading and basic math, but socially she's still shy. It's understandable, considering what she's been through." "Of course, but she's improving every day. She's already made 2 friends, Laura and Sophie." Hearing the name Sophie, Richard remembered the girl that Annie Clark had mentioned, the one who tried to escape from Sarah and was never seen again. It was just a coincidence, but the name made him uneasy. In the second week of school, Lily came home with a worried expression. "Daddy, there's a man who stands outside the school sometimes. He looks at the children a lot." Richard's blood ran cold. "What kind of man?" "An old man with grey hair. He wears a dark suit. Today he waved to me." "Did you talk to him?" "No, I remembered what you said about strangers." "Very good, sweetheart. You did the right thing." Richard immediately called Paul and the school. The principal confirmed that she had received complaints from other parents about a suspicious man watching the children. "I'm going to call the police," said Sister Agnes. "This kind of behavior is unacceptable." The next day, Richard decided to pick Lily up personally from school instead of sending the driver. When he arrived, he saw the black car parked across the street. Marcus Blackwood was standing near the gate, watching the children leave. Richard parked and walked directly towards the man. "Can I help you with something?" Blackwood turned around, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "Just observing. It's a beautiful school. Do you have any children studying here?" "Not exactly." Blackwood's smile became more sinister. "But I have an interest in some of the students." "Mr. Blackwood, I know who you are and I know what you're doing here." The man raised his eyebrows. "Really? And what am I doing?" "Looking for Lily." "But you can stop looking. She's under my protection now and you won't get near her." "Interesting. You must be the businessman who messed up my plans with Sarah." The casual admission shocked Richard. "So you really were trying to buy her? It was a legitimate business. I was offering a better life for the child." "Better life? You were going to torture her." "I was going to love her in my own way," said Blackwood, his eyes shining with something sick. "And I still will. One day you'll let your guard down." At that moment the police arrived. Richard had warned that he would be there and asked for reinforcements. Blackwood saw the patrol, cars approaching, and quickly got into his car. "This isn't over," he said through the window, before speeding off. Richard stood on the sidewalk, trembling with anger and fear. Blackwood had practically confessed his intentions, but hadn't done anything technically illegal, and his final threat echoed in Richard's mind like a dark omen. When Lily came out of school and saw her father's expression, she asked, "Daddy, are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart," he lied, hugging her tightly. "Let's go home." But both knew that the threat still loomed over them, and that they might need to take more drastic measures to ensure Lily's safety. After the confrontation with Blackwood at the school, Richard made a drastic decision. That same night, he began to make plans to move to another city with Lily. For 2 weeks, he worked secretly with Dr. Castleman to transfer his business and find a new home far from upstate New York. "Daddy, why are we taking so many trips to see houses?" asked Lily during one of the visits to Greenwich, a neighboring town where Richard considered moving. "I'm thinking of moving our company here. The mountain air is good for you," he explained, trying to sound casual. "But I like my school, and Sister Agnes. You can make new friends in a new school." Lily studied him with her insightful eyes. "It's because of the bad man, isn't it?" Her intelligence still surprised him. "What makes you think that?" Because you keep looking at the street all the time, and now we don't go to the park anymore. And you always want to know where I am, even when I'm just in the yard." Richard knelt in front of her. "You're right. I'm worried about our safety, but I promise I'll protect you no matter what happens." "I know you will," she said, hugging him. "You always protect me." But the moving plans were interrupted by an urgent call from Paul. "Mr. Thompson, you need to come to the police station. Immediately, they arrested Blackwood." "Arrested? Why?" "Attempted kidnapping. He tried to approach a 6-year-old child in Stamford. The parents called the police, and when they checked his record, they found evidence linking him to Sarah's network." Richard felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Does that mean Lily is safe?" "For now, yes, but there's something else you need to know." At the police station, Detective Robert Davis, a 48-year-old man with 20 years of experience in crimes against minors, explained the situation. "Mr. Thompson, during the investigation of Blackwood's computer, we found something disturbing." "What?" "He had pictures of Lily. Many pictures, taken during the months when she was with Sarah. He had been watching her for much longer than we imagined." Richard sat heavily in the chair. "Pictures from where?" "From the street, from the church, from various places where Sarah put her to beg. Blackwood had created a real dossier about Lily." "Why specifically her?" The detective hesitated. "According to his statement, Lily resembled a daughter he lost a few years ago. He developed a sick obsession." "Lost how?" "His daughter died in an accident at 6 years old. From then on, he began to look for substitutes, as he himself said. The revelation was both enlightening and terrifying. Blackwood was not just a common criminal. He was a mentally disturbed man, driven by a personal obsession with Lily." "Is he going to stay in jail?" "With the evidence we have and the attempted kidnapping in Stamford, yes. Probably for many years." Richard returned home relieved, but still shaken. When he told Lily that the bad man had been arrested, she reacted unexpectedly. "Was he watching me for a long time?" she asked. "Unfortunately, yes. That's why Aunt Sarah always knew when someone was being kind to me. She said she had eyes everywhere." The connection that Lily made left Richard stunned. "Do you think Sarah knew he was watching you?" "I think so. Sometimes she talked on the phone about making the merchandise more attractive to the buyer. I didn't understand at the time, but now—" "Lily, you never told me this before." "Because it was part of the secrets that she said I should never tell. But now that he's been arrested, I can talk, right?" Richard hugged the girl, impressed once again by her maturity and ability to understand. "You can talk about anything. With me, you never need to keep secrets that hurt you again." That week, with Blackwood arrested and the immediate threat removed, the life of Richard and Lily began to find a more normal rhythm. They cancelled the moving plans, and Lily returned to her school routine with less constant supervision. But it was during this phase of apparent normality that the greatest revelation of Lily's life came to light. During a session with the psychologist, Dr. Bennett, Lily finally began to talk about her memories of her biological parents. "My mother's name was Mary and my father's John," she said. "They were very loving to me." "Do you remember what they were like?" asked the psychologist. "Mom had brown hair like mine and always smelled like flowers. Dad was tall and strong and would carry me in his arms to see the stars." "And do you remember how they left?" Lily was quiet for a long time. "It was raining a lot that day. They went to get medicine for me because I had a high fever. They said they would be right back." "And then?" "Then Aunt Sarah appeared at our house. She said that Mum and Dad had gone to heaven because of a car accident, and that now she was going to take care of me." "How did you feel when she said that?" "Very sad. but also confused because Aunt Sarah didn't seem sad. She seemed happy. This observation deeply disturbed Dr. Bennett, who reported the case to Richard. There's something that doesn't add up in this story. Sarah appeared at Lily's house on the same day as the accident? From what I understood, yes. That's very strange. How did she know about the accident so quickly? And why did she automatically assume responsibility for the child? The psychologist suggested that Paul investigate the death of Lily's parents more deeply. There may not be anything wrong, but there are some inconsistencies that are worth checking. A week later, Paul returned with information that shocked everyone involved. Mr. Thompson, there's something very wrong with the story we know about the death of Lily's parents. What did you find out? First, John and Mary Roberts didn't die on the day that Sarah said. The accident happened 3 days after she appeared. At their house. How so? According to the records I managed to access, Sarah appeared at the family's house claiming to be a social worker, saying that there was a report of abuse against the parents. But that was a lie. Completely false. There was no report, and Sarah was never a social worker. So she kidnapped Lily? It seems so. She convinced the parents to leave Lily with her temporarily while the supposed investigation was happening. 3 days later, when the parents were going to the police to report the disappearance of their daughter, they suffered the accident. Richard felt nauseous. Are you suggesting that Sarah caused the accident? I have no evidence of that, but the coincidence is very big. And there's a witness who saw Sarah following the car of Lily's parents on the night of the accident. The revelation completely changed Richard's understanding of what had happened. Lily was not just an orphan that Sarah had offered to take care of. She was a child who had been literally stolen from her family. Do I need to tell this to Lily? Eventually, yes, replied Dr. Bennett when Richard consulted her. But very carefully. She's been through enough trauma. How do I explain to a 6-year-old that the woman who raised her for 2 years may have been responsible for the death of her parents? Slowly, with psychological support, and focusing on the fact that now she is safe and loved. That night, Richard stayed awake late, thinking about how to approach this terrible revelation with Lily. She had already lost so much, had already suffered so much. How could she also carry the weight of knowing that Sarah not only mistreated her, but possibly destroyed her original family? When he finally fell asleep, his dreams were haunted by images of a small child being torn from her parents' arms, without knowing that she would never see them again. And he knew that, in the morning, he would have to find strength to begin. To tell Lily a truth that would change her understanding about everything she had lived. Richard decided to wait for the right moment to reveal the truth about Sarah to Lily. For 2 weeks, he watched the girl adapting better and better to normal life, making friends at school, laughing more frequently, having fewer nightmares. The idea of destroying this newly conquered peace tormented him. But the decision was taken out of his hands when Lily came home from school one Friday with a worried expression. "Daddy, the teacher said that our class is going to do a project about family. Each child needs to tell the story of their parents and grandparents. And how do you feel about that?" "Confused," she admitted, "because I don't really know the story of my family. I just know that my parents left and that Aunt Sarah said she was going to take care of me." Richard realized that he couldn't put it off any longer. "Lily, I think it's time for us to talk about some important things about your family." They sat down in the living room, and Richard began carefully. "Remember that I sent someone to investigate your parents?" "I remember. We discovered some things that are difficult to understand, but that you need to know." Lily watched him with her big, attentive eyes. "Bad things. Some are sad, others are complicated." During the next hour, Richard told Lily, in words appropriate for her age, that Sarah had lied about almost everything. That she wasn't really her aunt, that she had taken Lily from her parents using lies, and that her parents had died while trying to get her back. "So my parents didn't abandon me?" asked Lily, tears streaming down her face. "Never. They loved you very much and were fighting to have you back when the accident happened. And Aunt Sarah knew that. She knew. She tricked your parents and then tricked you." Lily was silent for a long time, processing the information. Finally she asked, "Why did she do that?" "Because there are people in the world who do very bad things for money. Aunt Sarah used children to get money in various ways. So everything she said about me being a burden was a lie. All of it. You were never a burden. You were always a loved and wanted child." That night, Lily cried a lot, not only for the sadness of knowing the truth about her parents, but also for the relief of discovering that they really loved her. Richard stayed with her until she fell asleep, and when she finally rested, he himself cried for the injustice that child had suffered. In the following days, Lily demonstrated an impressive maturity in processing these revelations. During a session with Dr. Bennett, she verbalized feelings that surprised even the experienced psychologist. "I always knew that there was something wrong with Aunt Sarah's stories," said Lily. "They never made complete sense, and deep in my heart, I always felt that my parents loved me." "How did you know that?" "From the memories that I kept hidden. Aunt Sarah tried to make me forget, but I couldn't forget the smell of my mother or how my father made me laugh." "And how do you feel now, knowing the truth?" "Sad for my parents, but happy because now I have Daddy Richard, and he never lies. To me—" These words touched Richard deeply when the psychologist reported them. Lily had not only survived the trauma, but was using her emotional intelligence to heal. A week later, Paul brought the final update on the Sarah case. "The investigations have been completed. Sarah was sentenced to 15 years in prison for exploitation of minors, kidnapping, and racketeering." "And what about the death of Lily's parents?" "We couldn't prove that she caused the accident directly, but there is enough evidence that she was following them. The case was classified as involuntary manslaughter related to her criminal activities." "Does that mean that Lily is officially free from any ties to Sarah?" "Completely. And there's more good news. The adoption process has been accelerated due to the special circumstances. In 2 months, Lily will officially be your daughter." Richard felt a happiness that he hadn't experienced for years. "Does she know?" "Not. Yet I wanted to talk to you first." That afternoon, Richard called Lily for a special talk in the backyard of the house, where she liked to draw. "I have very important news for you," he said. "Good or bad?" "Very good. In a few months, when all the paperwork is ready, you will be officially my daughter. Forever." Lily stopped drawing and looked at him with shining eyes. "Really forever?" "Forever. Your name will be Lily Thompson, and no one will ever be able to separate us again." She threw herself into his arms, shouting with joy, "I'm going to be your real daughter. You're already my real daughter. The papers will just make it official. Can I tell my friends at school?" "You can tell whoever you want." The next day, Lily came home from school, radiant. "Daddy, I told everyone that I'm going to be your official daughter. The teacher said it's the most beautiful news she's heard this year." But in the midst of all this happiness, there was still an issue that needed to be resolved. The future of Richard's company. During the months caring for Lily and dealing with legal issues, he had neglected work a lot. Some important contracts were lost, and the company was facing financial difficulties. "Mr. Thompson," said Carol during a meeting, "we need to talk about the situation of the company. I know things aren't good. They're not. We lost 3 large clients this semester, and we have accumulated debts. Maybe it's time to consider selling part of the company or looking for a partner." The idea of selling the company that he had built for 20 years was painful, but Richard knew that Carol was right. "I'll think about it." That night, talking to Lily during dinner, she made an observation that surprised him. "Daddy, are you worried about work?" "A little." "Why?" "Because you get thoughtful when you're eating. And yesterday I heard you talking to Carol about selling the company." "You heard that?" "Not on purpose. But it's because of me, isn't it? Because you spent a lot of money and time taking care of me." Her maturity still impressed him. "Lily, taking care of you was the best decision I've ever made in my life. I don't regret anything. But you're in trouble because of it. They're just money problems, sweetheart. Nothing that can't be solved." "So you won't have to give me back?" The question broke Richard's heart. "Never. No matter what happens. With money or work, you will always be my daughter. Promise?" "I promise." That week, Richard made an important decision. He sold a minority stake in the company to a local investor, obtaining capital to pay off the debts and restructure the business. It was a solution that would allow him to maintain control of the company while ensuring financial stability for him and Lily. "It was the right decision," said Carol when the papers were signed. "Now we can focus on growing again." "And I can focus on being the best father possible for Lily," replied Richard. A month later, during a Saturday morning, Lily was drawing in the backyard when she asked a question that Richard didn't expect. "Daddy, do you think my real parents would be happy to know that you take care of me now?" Richard sat next to her on the grass. "I'm absolutely sure that they would. They loved you very much, and the greatest dream of any parent is to know that their child is safe and happy. I think they like you," she said, continuing to draw, "because sometimes when I'm very happy, I feel that they're near, also happy." "And how do you feel about having two families who loved you?" "I feel that I'm very lucky," she replied with a smile. "Not all children have that." Richard looked at the drawing she was making. A large house with many windows, 2 adults and a child in the garden, and in the sky, 2 figures that seemed to protect the scene from above. "Is that our family?" he asked. "It is. You, me, and my first parents taking care of us from up there." At that moment, Richard understood that Lily had found a healthy way to integrate her past with her present. She had not forgotten her biological parents, but had also completely embraced her new family. And he knew that regardless of the challenges that they might still face, they had built something precious and lasting together. 3 months had passed since the last revelations about Sarah, and the life of Richard and Lily had found a rhythm of normality that both never thought was possible. The girl was flourishing in school, her grades were excellent, and she had developed solid friendships with several classmates. But it was during this period of tranquility that a new complication arose. "Daddy," said Lily one Tuesday morning, playing distractedly with the cereal on her plate, "I need to tell you something about school." "What is it, sweetheart?" "There's a new girl in my class. Her name is Annie Clark, and she knows me." Richard stopped reading the newspaper. "What do you mean, knows you?" "She said that she lived with Aunt Sarah before me, and she told things that only someone who went through that would know." Richard's heart raced. Annie Clark was the name of the child that Paul had interviewed months ago, one of Sarah's previous victims. "And what else did she say?" "That she remembers me when I was younger, and that she's afraid that Aunt Sarah will get out of prison and come after us." "Lily, Aunt Sarah won't get out of prison for many years. You both are safe." "I know, but Annie Clark is very scared. She lives with a foster family now, but she says they don't believe her stories about what happened." Richard stood up immediately. "I'm going to call the school. I want to talk to this girl and her family." That afternoon, Richard met with Sister Agnes at the school. Annie Clark was there too, a thin 9-year-old girl with eyes that carried the same kind of trauma that Lily had demonstrated months ago. "Annie Clark," said Richard gently, "Lily told me that you know each other." "We know each other," replied the girl in a low voice. She was Aunt Sarah's favorite. Favorite how? Aunt Sarah always said that Lily was going to have a special future, that someone very important wanted her, and she treated her a little better than the rest of us. Richard understood that Annie Clark was referring to Blackwood, but he didn't want to scare her with details. "And now you're living with a new family." "I am. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson are good, but—" She hesitated. "But what?" "They think I make up stories about Aunt Sarah. They say that children sometimes fantasize bad things to get attention." Sister Agnes spoke up. "Mr. Thompson, I talked to Annie Clark's foster parents. They are well-intentioned people, but they really don't understand the dimension of the trauma she suffered. Can I talk to them? I think it would be very helpful. You went through the same experience with Lily." Over the weekend, Richard met Robert and Carol Peterson, a couple of teachers in their 40s who had adopted Annie Clark 6 months earlier. They were genuinely caring people, but clearly unprepared to deal with a traumatized child. "Annie Clark sometimes tells very dramatic stories about her previous life," explained Carol. "We think it's a way of processing the change of life." "Mr. and Mrs. Peterson," said Richard carefully, "Annie Clark's stories are probably true. Lily went through the same situation and reported similar experiences." "But some things she tells seem impossible," protested Robert, "like staying days without eating or being locked in dark rooms." "Unfortunately, those things happened. I have medical and police reports that prove it." The couple was silent, clearly shaken. "We didn't know," murmured Carol. "We thought she was exaggerating." "It's not your fault. But Annie Clark needs specialized psychological help, like Lily received." Richard suggested that Annie Clark be seen by Dr. Bennett and offered to pay for the initial consultations. "Lily recovered wonderfully with proper treatment. Annie Clark can have the same result." During the following weeks, the two girls became very close. Annie Clark frequently came to Richard's house to play with Lily, and he could see how the friendship was helping both to process their traumas. "It's good to have someone who understands," said Lily one afternoon after Annie Clark returned home. "She's the only person who really knows what it was like to live with Aunt Sarah." "And how do you feel helping her?" "Good, strong, like I can use the bad things that happened to me to help other people." Lily's maturity continued to impress Richard. At 6 years old, she already demonstrated an empathy and wisdom that many adults did not possess. It was during this period that Richard made a decision that would change not only his life, but potentially the lives of many other children. During a conversation with Dr. Castleman about the finalization of Lily's adoption, an idea began to form in his mind. "Dr. Castleman, how many children like Lily and Annie Clark are there in our region?" "Unfortunately, many. The child protection system is overloaded, and cases of abuse and neglect are more common than we would like." "And if someone wanted to help more children, how could they do that?" "There are several ways. Adoption, foster families, or even creating support organizations for families in difficulty." That night, Richard talked to Lily about his idea. "Sweetheart, what would you think if our house became a place where other children like you and Annie Clark could be safe? Like a shelter, something like that, a place where children who have been through difficult situations could come to recover and find loving families." Lily thought carefully. "It would be like helping other children find daddies like you." "Exactly. I would like that very much, but you would still be my main daddy, right? Forever. Nothing would change between us." Richard began to research the legal and practical possibilities of transforming part of his property into a temporary home for children at risk. The house was large enough, he had stable financial resources, and mainly, he had direct experience with what those children needed. But it was during this planning that an unexpected news changed everything. Paul appeared at his house one Thursday morning with a serious expression. "Mr. Thompson, I have news about Sarah. She didn't manage to reduce her sentence, did she? It's not that. She tried to kill herself in prison yesterday." Richard felt a chill in his stomach. Tried? Didn't succeed. She's in the prison. Hospital, but she's going to survive. The problem is that before the attempt, she made some disturbing statements to a human rights lawyer who was visiting her. What kind of statements? She said that there were more children hidden, children that nobody knew existed, and she gave some coordinates of locations where they could be. My God! And the police? They are already investigating, but there's something more. Sarah specifically mentioned that Lily knew about these other children. Richard looked at Lily, who was playing in the living room, oblivious to the conversation. She never mentioned other children besides Annie Clark and Ricky. Maybe she doesn't remember, or maybe she has blocked the memories, but if Sarah was telling the truth, there may be children still trapped somewhere. The revelation put Richard in an impossible position. He had finally managed to provide a normal and happy life for Lily, but now he might need to stir up her traumatic past to save other children. What does the police want? They want to talk to Lily very carefully, to see if she remembers anything that could help locate these children. What if it brings back her traumas? It's a risk, but if there are children suffering somewhere... Richard spent the night awake, wrestling with the decision. Protecting Lily was his absolute priority, but what if his daughter could help, save other children like she had been saved? The next morning, he made a decision that would test all the progress that Lily had made and that could change the course of their lives once again. It was time to find out if his daughter was strong enough to face her past one last time for the sake of children who might still be waiting for salvation. Richard decided to talk to Lily about the situation during breakfast on Friday, carefully, choosing his words so as not to scare her. "Lily, I need to ask you some questions about the time you spent with Sarah," he said, sitting next to her at the kitchen table. "About the bad things?" she asked, stopping eating. "It may be, but it's very important. The police have discovered that there may be other children who still need help, and you may have information that helps to find them." Lily was quiet for a moment, stirring her spoon in the cereal. "Like me? Like you were before coming to live with me, children who may be hidden in places you knew. I want to help," she said with surprising determination. "If there are children suffering like I suffered, I want them to be saved too." "Are you sure? It may be difficult to remember those things." "I'm sure, but will you stay with me?" "Always." That afternoon, Dr. Bennett came to Richard's house to conduct a special session with Lily. Detective Davis was also present, along with a social worker specializing in child cases. "Lily," began the psychologist gently, "I want you to try to remember all the places where Aunt Sarah took you, not just the places where you stayed, but also places that you visited." "Can I draw?" offered Lily. "It's easier for me to remember if I draw." For 2 hours, Lily drew several places. The abandoned house where Richard found her, the apartment in the housing complex, but also other locations that she hadn't mentioned before. "This here is a farm," she said, showing a drawing of a house surrounded by trees. "Aunt Sarah took me there a few times. There were other children, but she said they were different from me." "Different how?" asked the detective. "Newer, and they didn't go out to beg for money like I did. They always stayed inside the house." "Do you remember where this farm was?" "It was far. We drove a lot and passed over an old wooden bridge. And there was a sign with a strange name, Harmony Falls, or something like that." The social worker noted everything. "Do you remember how many children there were in that place?" 3 or 4, all little girls. One of them cried a lot and Aunt Sarah got angry." "And did you talk to these children?" I couldn't. Aunt Sarah said that if I talked to them, something bad would happen to me. Lily continued drawing, and gradually, more details emerged. She remembered an older woman who took care of the children on the farm, a man who sometimes appeared in a black car, different from Blackwood's, and mainly a constant feeling that those children were in an even worse situation than hers. Aunt Sarah always said that I was lucky, recalled Lily, that at least I could leave the house. The other girls never left. After the session, the detective was visibly disturbed. Mr. Thompson, Lily's descriptions match complaints we have received over the years about a place in the Harmony Falls area. We never managed to locate exactly where it was. And now we have much more specific information. The wooden bridge, the sign, the type of construction. Our team is going to the region tomorrow. That night, Lily showed signs of anxiety. For the first time in months, she had handled the session well during the day, but at night she began to have nightmares again. "Daddy," she said, waking up scared at 2 a.m, "I dreamed about the girls on the farm. They were crying and asking me for help." Richard consoled her, but also realized that reliving those memories had reactivated some of Lily's traumas. "It was just a dream, sweetheart, but know that you were very brave today. Because of you, those girls may be found." "What if the police can't find them?" "They will. And even if it takes time, you did your part." On Saturday morning, Paul called with urgent news. "Mr. Thompson, the operation was a success. They found the farm exactly where Lily described. And the children. 4 girls between 3 and 5 years old, all in a state of severe neglect, but alive. They are being taken to the hospital now." Richard felt immense relief. And those responsible? They arrested the woman who took care of them and are after the man that Lily described. It seems it was an operation of preparing children for... "I understand. You don't need to give details." When Richard told Lily that the children had been found and saved, she cried, not from sadness but from relief and joy. "Are they going to be okay?" she asked. "They're going to need a lot of care like you needed, but now they're safe. Can I meet them when they get better?" "Maybe, if it's good for them and for you." 2 weeks later, one of the rescued girls, Emily Carter, 4 years old, was brought to meet Lily at the hospital where she was still recovering. The meeting was supervised by psychologists and social workers. "Hi," said Lily gently, sitting next to Emily Carter's bed. "My name is Lily. Do you remember me?" The smaller girl nodded shyly. "You're the girl that the aunt said was special. And you're very special too. Now we're both safe." "How did you get safe?" "A very good daddy found me and took me to his house, and now he's my real daddy." "Am I going to have a daddy too?" "Yes, you are. Very good people take care of children. Like us." The simple conversation between the 2 girls deeply touched all the adults present. Lily was using her own experience of recovery to comfort another traumatized child. "She has a natural instinct to help other children," observed Dr. Bennett afterwards. "It's remarkable in someone so young." This observation reinforced Richard's decision about the temporary home project. Lily had not only recovered from her traumas, she was using her experience to help other children. A month later, the official adoption papers of Lily were finally signed. In a simple ceremony at the courthouse, with Carol and Paul as witnesses, Lily officially became Lily Thompson. "How do you feel being officially my daughter?" asked Richard after the ceremony. "The same as before," she said with a smile, "because I was already your daughter in my heart. And now it's just official for everyone to know." That night, during the celebratory dinner, Lily made a statement that perfectly summarized her journey. "Daddy, can I tell you something?" "Always. When I was little and lived with Aunt Sarah, I dreamed that someone was going to save me. But I never imagined that when that person saved me, I would also be able to help save other children. And how do you feel about that? I feel that the bad things that happened to me served for something good, like everything had a purpose. You are a very wise girl, Lily Thompson. I learned from my daddy, she said, hugging him tightly. But even in the midst of all this happiness and fulfillment, Richard knew that there was still a last chapter to be written in his journey with Lily. The temporary home project was moving forward, the legal papers were being prepared, and soon his house would become a refuge for other children like his daughter. It was the beginning of a new phase of their lives, where they not only had found each other, but would use their experience to create hope for other families who still needed to find each other. And Richard knew that, with Lily by his side, they were ready for any challenge that came their way. 6 months after Lily's official adoption, Richard's life took a turn that he had never imagined. The temporary home project for children had advanced rapidly, and his house was being renovated to officially receive other children at risk. "Daddy, are you sure you want to do this?" asked Lily one Saturday morning, watching the workers installing bunk beds in one of the rooms that would be transformed into a collective dormitory. "Why the question?" "Because our house is going to be very different, and you're going to have to take care of many children, not just me." Richard knelt in front of her. "Lily, you will always be my priority. Nothing will change that. But now we have the chance to help other children like you were helped." "I know. It's just that..." "What if some of them don't like me? What if they get jealous because I'm your real daughter?" Lily's concern was understandable. At 7 years old, she had finally found stability and security, and the idea of sharing this with strangers made her anxious. "We're going to establish clear rules from the beginning," promised Richard. "This is our house. You are my daughter, and the other children will be here temporarily until they find their own permanent families." "Temporarily, how long?" "A few months, maybe a year. It depends on each case." The first child to arrive was Michael, a 5-year-old boy who had been rescued from a situation of family neglect. He was shy and scared, reminding Richard vividly of how Lily was when he first found her. "Hi, Michael," said Lily when the boy arrived, carrying only a plastic bag with some clothes. "I'm Lily. Welcome to our house." Michael hid behind the social worker who had brought him, but Richard could see curiosity in his eyes when he looked at Lily. "Michael," said Richard gently, "you must be tired from the trip. Do you want to see your room?" The boy nodded shyly, and Lily immediately offered to show him the house. "Come on, Michael. There's a room just to play and a library with lots of cool books." In the following days, Richard watched fascinated as Lily naturally assumed the role of protective older sister. She taught Michael where things were, showed him how the house routine worked, and mainly demonstrated that it was safe to trust the adults there. "How did you know what to do with Michael?" asked Richard to Lily after a week. "Because I remembered what it was like to be scared and not know if people were going to be kind to me. So I tried to be with him the way I wanted someone to be with me." Lily's emotional wisdom continued to impress Richard. She was transforming her traumatic experience into active compassion. 2 weeks later, Beatrice arrived, a 6-year-old girl who had been abandoned by her parents. Unlike Michael, Beatrice was aggressive and distrustful, constantly testing the limits and reacting angrily to any attempt at approaching her. "I don't want to be here," she shouted on the first day, throwing the toys that Lily had offered. "I want to leave. I didn't want to be here at first either," said Lily calmly, picking up the toys. "But then I discovered that this is a good place." "You're lying. All adults lie. Daddy Richard has never lied to me, not once." Beatrice looked at Lily suspiciously. "Daddy? He adopted me. Before I didn't have a family either, like you." And he really is good. He's the best daddy in the world, and if you want, you can talk to him about anything. Gradually, Beatrice began to open up. Richard realized that having Lily as a living example of recovery was more powerful than any therapy or conversation that he could offer. In 3 months, the house had received 6 children in total. Michael had found a loving adoptive family and had happily moved, promising to visit often. Beatrice was still there, but had transformed from an aggressive child into a caring girl, who called Richard uncle and Lily sister. "Our house is working," said Carol during one of the weekly meetings they held to evaluate the project. "The children are recovering more quickly than expected." "It's because of Lily," replied Richard. "She has a natural talent for this. Have you thought about formalizing this talent? Maybe when she's older, she can work officially helping traumatized children." The idea intrigued Richard. Lily was only 7 years old, but she already demonstrated a unique ability to connect with children in situations similar to the one she had lived. It was during this period of success that an unexpected complication arose. Richard received a call from Detective Davis with disturbing news. "Mr. Thompson, Sarah managed to get a hearing for sentence review. She is claiming that she was coerced into confessing crimes she didn't commit. Is that possible?" "Unfortunately, yes. The judicial system sometimes allows these reviews, especially when there are allegations of coercion." "What if she manages to reduce the sentence? In the worst-case scenario, she could get out of prison in 2 or 3 years instead of 15. The news shook Richard deeply. He had built an entire life based on the premise that Sarah would never again be a threat to Lily. "Do I need to tell Lily?" "I think it's better not to for now. It may be that the review is denied, but you should be prepared for the possibility." Richard decided not to tell Lily immediately, but he discreetly began to take extra precautions. He reinforced the security of the house, talked to the school about emergency protocols, and consulted Dr. Castleman about legal options to protect Lily. "Even if Sarah gets out of prison," explained the lawyer, "she has no legal right over Lily. The adoption is final and irrevocable, but could she try something?" "Theoretically, yes, but it would be a crime, and she would know that." 2 weeks later, Richard noticed that Lily was quieter than usual. During dinner, she finally verbalized what she was thinking. "Daddy, are you worried about something?" "Why do you ask?" "Because you keep looking out the window all the time, like you did when the bad man arrived the first time." Lily's perception was frighteningly sharp. "I'm just being careful, sweetheart. Is it about Aunt Sarah?" The direct question caught him off guard. "Why would you think that?" "Because sometimes I still have nightmares about her, and I think about if she'll try to find me when she gets out of prison." Richard realized that he couldn't hide the truth anymore. "There's a small possibility that she may get out of prison sooner than we expected. And if she comes here, then I'm going to protect you. And now we have several people who help us. The police, the lawyers, the social workers, and the other children in the house." The question showed how Lily had expanded her perspective to include responsibility for other children. "I'm going to protect all of you." "Daddy," she said, taking his hand, "if Aunt Sarah tries to take me, do you promise you won't let her?" "I promise with my life." That night, Lily slept in Richard's room for the first time in months, and he realized that, despite all the progress they had made, the shadows of the past could still project over their future. But he also realized that now they weren't alone. They had a house full of children who supported each other, a network of professionals who protected them, and mainly a bond between father and daughter that had become strong enough to face any storm. Richard knew that the next few months would be crucial, But he also knew that regardless of what happened, he and Lily had built something that no one could destroy. A family based on unconditional love and the mutual determination to protect not only each other, but all the children who needed a safe haven. And that certainty gave him strength to face any challenge that the future might bring. 2 years had passed since Richard received the news about the possible review of Sarah's sentence. During that time, life at the group home had flourished in ways that he never imagined possible. 15 children had passed through there, all finding loving families or being reunified with relatives in safe conditions. Lily, now 9 years old, had truly become the heart of the operation. Her ability to connect with traumatized children was officially recognized. She participated in therapy sessions as a child facilitator, helping other children to open up about their traumas. "Daddy," she said one Sunday morning while helping to prepare breakfast for the 4 children who currently lived with them. "Annie Clark called yesterday. She wants to visit us on vacation." "That's great. How is she?" "Very well. Her parents finally understood what she went through, and now she's doing therapy with Dr. Bennett too. And you know what else?" "What?" "She wants to study psychology when she grows up to help children like us." Richard smiled. It was gratifying to see how the children who had gone through trauma were transforming their experiences into motivation to help other people. "And you? Have you thought about what you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to work with children too, but I don't know yet if as a psychologist, social worker, or creating more houses like ours. All are wonderful options." At that moment, Paul arrived for the monthly visit he made to check on the well-being of the children. But his expression indicated that he brought important news. "Mr. Thompson, I need to talk to you about Sarah," he said after greeting all the children. "The sentence review was approved." "No, it was definitively denied, but there's something more important." Paul paused, looking at Lily, who was playing with the other children in the room. "Sarah died in prison 3 days ago." Richard felt a complex mixture of emotions. How? Health complications. She developed an aggressive cancer and refused to have treatment. According to the doctors, she had been in deep depression since the review was denied. And now? Now, Lily is definitely free from any shadow of the past. Sarah will never be able to threaten her again. Richard watched Lily laughing with the other children and wondered if he should tell her about Sarah's death. He decided to wait for the right moment. That afternoon, during a walk in the backyard, Lily asked a question that surprised him. "Daddy, do you think very bad people can change and become good?" "Why do you ask?" "Because sometimes I think about Aunt Sarah. I know she did horrible things to me and other children, but I wonder if deep down she wasn't just a very hurt person too." Lily's maturity and compassion still impressed him. "What makes you think that?" "Because I learned that people who hurt children were usually hurt when they were children too. It's like a cycle that passes from one person to another." "And what do you think breaks that cycle?" "Love. People like you who decide to love instead of hurt." Richard realized that it was the right moment to tell about Sarah. "Lily, I have news about Aunt Sarah." "She got out of prison?" "No. She passed away, sweetheart. She got very sick and died in prison." Lily was silent for a long time, processing the information. "How do I feel about that?" "I don't know. How do you feel?" "Sad," she said finally. "Not for me, but for her. Because she lived a whole life without knowing true love, and now she will never be able to know." "You don't feel anger?" "Not anymore. Anger hurts whoever feels it, not whoever caused the pain. I learned that in therapy." That night, Lily asked to have a small ceremony in the backyard. "I want to light a candle for Aunt Sarah," she explained. "Why?" Because I want to forgive her completely, and I want her to have peace wherever she is now." Richard watched his 9-year-old daughter demonstrating a spiritual wisdom that many adults never reached. When she lit the candle and closed her eyes in a silent prayer, he knew that Lily had found a way to completely heal the wounds of the past. 6 months later, the group home of Richard and Lily received official recognition from the government as a model of care for traumatized children. They were invited to present their work at a national conference on child protection. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Richard during his presentation, "I want to introduce you to someone who understands better than anyone what it means to transform trauma into hope. My daughter, Lily Thompson." Lily took the stage with confidence, no longer the scared child that he had found on the street 3 years before, but an eloquent and self-assured girl. "My name is Lily," she began, "and when I was 6 years old, I lived on the street begging because a bad woman forced me. I thought I was going to live like that forever, or that I was going to die without anyone caring about me." The auditorium was in absolute silence. But one day, a kind man saw me and decided that every child deserves to be loved. He not only saved me, he taught me that I could use what happened to me to help other children. Today, our house has already helped more than 20 children to find loving families. And you know why? Because when a child who has gone through trauma sees another child who has healed, she understands that healing is possible. I want to say to all the people who work saving children, don't be afraid to show them that life can be good. Because sometimes a hurt child just needs to see that another child has managed to be happy to believe that she can too. The audience stood in an ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Richard was crying, not from sadness, but from immense pride in the extraordinary woman that Lily was becoming. After the presentation, a journalist approached them. "Mr. Thompson, what is the secret of your success?" "There is no secret," he replied, looking at Lily. "It's just unconditional love and the belief that every child can heal if loved properly." "And you, Lily, what would you say to a child who is going through what you went through?" Lily thought carefully before answering. "I would say that no matter how dark it seems now, there is light waiting for you, and that there are people in the world who will love you exactly as you are. You just need to resist until they find you." A year later, on a sunny June morning, Richard was having coffee with Lily when she made an announcement that surprised him. "Daddy, I've decided what I want to do when I grow up." "What?" "I want to study law to specialize in child protection, and I want to create a foundation that teaches families how to care for traumatized children." "It's a wonderful goal. And there's more. I want our house to be just the beginning. I want there to be houses like ours in every city in the country." Richard looked at his 10-year-old daughter planning to change the child protection system of the country and knew that she would succeed. Lily had the determination, the lived experience, and mainly the heart necessary to make the difference. "You know what makes me most proud of you?" he said. "What?" "That you took the worst experience of your life and transformed it into your greatest strength to help other people. I learned from you," she said, smiling. "You showed me that when bad things happen, we can choose to make them seeds of kindness." Indeed, that afternoon, while watching Lily playing in the backyard with the 3 children who currently lived with them, Richard reflected on the extraordinary journey they had shared. 4 years before, he was a lonely and embittered man, living an empty life after the loss of his wife. Lily was a broken child without hope, surviving on scraps of compassion from others. Now they were a family who had found purpose in helping other families to form. Their house had become a symbol of hope in the community, a place where wounded children discovered that they could dream again. And Richard knew that this was just the beginning. With Lily by his side, they would continue saving children, one at a time, until no child in the world needed to go through what she had gone through. At sunset that day, father and daughter sat on the porch, watching the other children play in the backyard. "Daddy," said Lily, "thank you for saving me." "Thank you for saving me too," replied Richard. "How so?" "Because when I found you that cold morning, I didn't know that I was saving the person who would give complete meaning to my life." Lily smiled and snuggled next to him. "I think we saved each other together." And as they watched the stars begin to appear in the sky over upstate New York, both knew that they had found something that not all people are lucky enough to discover, the true love that transforms lives and creates daily miracles in the simplicity of caring for each other. The story that began with a child begging for alms and a lonely man had transformed into a legacy of love that would continue impacting lives for generations. And this was just the first chapter of a journey that promised to be even more extraordinary.